Greetings. So yeah, it's time for another video. It's been a few weeks. The other video didn't get a whole lot of visitors. Actually, only got 4. But still, you know what? You put stuff out, you see where it goes, and you move on from there. So here's the deal. I've basically had the same weight for years. I mean, it vacillated about 6 pounds. So I had a high that wasn't really high. I had a low that wasn't really low. But for me, it was always that balance, and I had that going. And I've had an appointment with one of the physicians 9 months ago, and she wasn't necessarily happy with the weight, even though I said, hey, I've had the same weight area, the same range for years, and nothing has changed on me. And she says, well, that's not necessarily a good thing, which I'm thinking, well, I thought that was a good thing. But still, it irks me that she had said that. And it irked me when I saw some of the other doctors and they were trying to talk me into taking certain medications that I wasn't going to take. I mentioned that in the previous video. So I decided for the beginning of July, or I'll say the Monday before the beginning of July, I was going to change my eating habits. And basically my eating habits said that I was going to pay more attention to the food I was eating, seeing how that was going to work with me, see what else I could do, see if I could actually lose some weight. And, I didn't plan my meals, which is something I used to do all the time. But I said, you know what? I'm going to, take care of this whole thing. And I set it up. I downloaded MyFitnessPal, which is an app that I used a long time ago, and I'd forgotten that I had actually used that. And another friend of mine, her name's Holly, and she was going to start doing the same thing. Matter of fact, I think she started a week after me. So, you know what? At least now we had someone, at least I had someone I could talk to. She had someone she could talk to. She studied a lot more than I did. But you know what? I've been diabetic for, at this point, almost 30 years. And so, anyhow, so I started tracking the foods that I had. And initially, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't overeat anything. I was trying to plan my stuff. I still drank my diet soda. That's just how that was. I was still going to have some kind of dessert at night. Initially, I was just taking a little bit of ice cream. I did go to a place where I could get some milkshakes a few times because, it's summer. It's hot. It's hot in here. By the way, I hope that's not bothering you, but, I need to have the fan on right now. So I started doing that. I didn't exercise a lot. I did walk around the neighborhood, which is about 30 minutes, but I did that. And with the job I have, when I work Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, I basically, walk at least 4 miles, if not a little more than 5. I drive somewhere, get out of the car, walk, get back in the car, drive. And, it's a 7 or 8 hour day, a whole lot of walking and some other stuff. So I have that part. And then I'm saying, well, you know what? I've got to try to figure out what I'm going to eat in the morning before I go to work. Because I don't like cereal. I don't really like bread. But I decided to try one of these fancy breads that my grocery store has. So I got something that they call it Tuscan bread. And they have Tuscan olive oil, Tuscan garlic. I loved the Tuscan garlic. So I did that. I toasted some of it up. Put butter on it. Couple of times I put peanut butter on it. And that was going to be my breakfast. And, I don't get anything to drink in the house. What I do is I'll start there, but I go to the gas station, fill up the car if I have to. But whether I have to fill up the car or not with the gas, I go inside and I do a mix of, see what do they call those things? Ices. It's just like a cherry flavored icy kind of thing. And I mix that with Diet Coke. I like Diet Pepsi better, but in this case, they had Diet Coke. So I would mix those things together, get a taste. It was nice and cold. I felt really good because, like I said, it's summer. It was bothering me. So there it was. Now, I started to realize after about a week or so that things had started to change in a weird way because I found myself thinking about what I wanted to eat so much that I was only eating basically one meal a day. As a matter of fact, today I could say that I at least got 2 meals in. I had some leftover pizza that I had from last week. I brought some of it home, so I did that. And it wasn't a lot of food. And so I had that for breakfast. And then for dinner, I had some chicken that I bought at the grocery store that was already cooked. So I just had to, cut that up and had some mashed potatoes with that. And that was not a bad dinner. But I started realizing that there are times when I don't think I'm doing anything weird or anything wrong, but what happens is that I may have like a little snack or something, and then I just got to get in bed and I need to take a nap. I get that same feeling when I'm driving, but I can't afford to fall asleep. I can't, do any of that kind of thing. So that's when I will stop at a different store, and I will get some really, really cold water, or if it's a burned area, I don't know if that's anywhere else in the country, but it's big in this area. And I go in and I try to see if they have the cherry slurpy stuff that I can mix with some diet soda. And if they don't have that, then I get a couple of big bottles of ice water, ice, very, very cold water. And that helps to wake me up. But it's a weird thing in the fact that I also stopped sleeping as much. So I was struggling. I was averaging between 2.5 to 4 hours of sleep. That wasn't good. So I said, I've got to figure this out because I'm not eating right. I'm eating less. I've lost weight. I lost 8.5 pounds before I had my appointment on the 28th of June. So I said, well, this can't continue like this. And it's just, one of those kind of things where I said, well, at least I've lost some weight. I'll figure out some other stuff. Now, here's a couple of things that happened. It's very weird, but it's interesting. My niece called and asked me if I wanted to go to the movies. I didn't want to go to the movies, but she wanted to go. So we went to the mall, and it was like a holiday, so we could basically only see a couple of different movies, and the only one that I knew the name of, even though I didn't know anything about it, was something called the Super Mario Kart thing, whatever. And she knew a little bit about it, so we go there. We go, into the theater, and they have the popcorn there. And she gets her thing, and then I say to the lady, I want the medium popcorn, but I want as much butter as you can put in there. And then she bought herself a bunch of candy. I only got myself one candy thing, whatever. So we go into the theater, and we're sitting there, and everything goes like 25 to 30 minutes of previews and advertisements and whatever. And then the movie starts. And 15 minutes after the movie starts, my niece falls asleep. And she doesn't wake up again until the movie is ended. Now I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Should I wake her up? Should I shake her? Whatever. I said, nah, I just let her stay. She'll wake up. I didn't think that she would stay asleep throughout the whole thing. As for me, I ate the popcorn and I set it down, and I started getting a little drowsy. And I said, well, geez, I guess I'm going to save this candy for, another time. And when we walked out of the theater, because I woke her up after the movie ended, and I was exhausted, and I didn't know why I was exhausted. So I told her, I just got to sit in this chair. I'm sorry, I've got to sit outside here. And I just got to, get my mind together. And I closed my eyes, and I just waited like 5 or 10 minutes. And then we walked down to the first floor of the mall, because the theater is up on the third floor. I walked down to the mall. I had taken her into IKEA because she had never been into IKEA, and she loved that kind of stuff. I'd only ever been in there once for maybe 5 minutes. So I went and I'm looking around and saying, okay, this is not a bad thing. I'm not going to buy anything here, but not a bad thing. And before I got out of IKEA, I started feeling really tired again. So I told her, look, if you're okay, you walk around here and look at some of this other stuff that you like. I'm going to go out in the hallway and I'm going to sit in one of those big chairs that they have. So I did that. I sat in the big chair and I was just totally exhausted, super exhausted. So she finally comes out. She sits down. I said, okay, give me 5 minutes. Just going to chill here. And actually, I said, actually, wait, I'm going to go in and get myself a bottle of water. So I go get another bottle of water. I drink that. That helps me to get a little more sense in my mind. So now we can walk all the way to the other end of the mall, go out through the basement, go out into, the area where the car's in the basement, because that's where I like to park my car when I'm going to see a movie. And then I start driving back to her home. The problem was twofold. One, even though she's 13 now, she wasn't sure how to get me to the house because there'd been all kind of construction going on. And I had trouble thinking about how to get her to the house because of the construction and because I just couldn't figure everything out. I was going relatively slow, so we weren't in that kind of danger, but I just wasn't thinking right. And I finally get her to the house and I said, okay, I'm going to let you just walk in the house by yourself. I got to get home. I've got to get a nap. I'm sorry. So we do that. I get home and I slept for 2.5 hours. I said, wow, I just got to change this. So I told you I have this other friend of mine who's going through all this stuff. So I send her a note on Telegram. After I woke up, I told her what was going on. And she says, how much carbs did you have? I said, truthfully, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. She said, what'd you have at the theater? So I told her I'd had all this popcorn. And she says, did you have the butter? Yes. It turns out that butter is high in carbohydrates. Never occurred to me that butter, a condiment, would get you high on carbohydrates. Never crossed my mind. Bread, yes, I knew about that. I knew about pasta. I've got 7 boxes of pasta in the cabinet and some other stuff, but it never occurred to me about the butter. So I haven't had any butter at a movie because I went to see Supergirl by myself, and I also went to see Spider-Man Brand New Day by myself, and I didn't get any popcorn, and I was able to stay awake through both of those movies. So that was kind of cool. And I didn't hate either one of them. Well, a lot of people love Brand New Day. Supergirl, I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was as good as Superman had been a year earlier, but I still loved it. And yes, I think Millie Alcock or whatever, I think that's her name. I think she's just cute. So there you go. I enjoyed that. But it was one of those kind of things where I said, I've got to try to figure out how to do all this stuff differently. So I started trying to say I was going to do everything differently. Turns out that there were days that I didn't eat anything in the morning, didn't eat anything in the afternoon. We get to late afternoon when it's getting close to the time where I'm almost done delivering pharmaceuticals and I start just ready. I'm not feeling it at all. I'm feeling like I'm crashing. I carry my thing here. Everyone doesn't have one of these, but I do. So it's a receiver because I have the Dexcom G, and right now it's at 140. But one day last week, it was down to 75. And I said, oh my goodness, this isn't gonna, do well. And I had just 2 more deliveries to go. So I made it. The lady I delivered something to, we have this good rapport. She gave me a little bit of water just so I could do that. And, I at least made it back to the office and the computer was messed up. So I, told the folks in the office, look, I will come back and I will do all the paperwork tomorrow. And I'm just going to, I'll be good. So I get in the car. I start driving home. I'm a little bit tired, hoping I get here. And then I said, wait a minute. I have glucose tabs in the car. Because how that works, sometimes you just forget. You're not thinking straight. I had the glucose tabs. So if you're diabetic or if you're borderline diabetic and your glucose is dropping, you should at least take one tab. I took three because, like I said, I was crashing. I just decided to take all three. I didn't want to take any chances. Got home. I was doing okay. Still took a nap, but it was only for about 25 minutes. Felt pretty good. Decided, okay, I've got to figure out something to eat. I did find something to eat. Wasn't a bunch of food, but like I said, I hadn't eaten for breakfast. I hadn't eaten anything at lunchtime. It's just one of those things where I realized I can't skip meals. That's not going to be a good thing. So it also led to me now where the week before that, I was taking my first vacation in 20 years. The last time I had a vacation was 2005. And I can't remember where I went. I went with my ex. We went somewhere. I can't even begin to tell you where I went. But it was a vacation. In this case, it was different because my vacation was not really a true vacation in the sense that I only work Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. So I had called the manager and I said, hey, can Harry work for me on Monday and Tuesday next week? And then, well, he works Mondays and Tuesdays. I said, can he work Wednesday and Thursday for me? So that would give me 4 days off. And I will still come in Friday. And then that still gives me 4 days off. So basically, I have 10 days off, counting the weekend. And then I have 4 more days off, 10 days out of 11. I thought that sounded pretty good. So she called him, and I didn't think he would fall for it. But I had covered for him a few times over the last few months because I guess he's got some kind of issue, not mentally, health related. So, he's called me once, but he usually calls her and asks her if I can cover for him. And, I'm a sap. So yes, I cover for him. And, but it worked out okay. Now, the weird thing about having all that time off is that I didn't know what to do. Hadn't had a vacation in 20 years. The last vacation I had, I went with my ex somewhere. I don't remember where we went, but we went somewhere. So basically, I stayed in the house all those days except for one day. Isn't that a shame? But that was me. I didn't know what to do. It's comfortable sitting in the house, not having to do anything. Um, you know, that's not bad. I did have an appointment talking about my feet with the, podiatrist at the Nappy building. I had the Jocelyn appointment in 2 weeks for something else. I can't remember what that's for. Oh, that's right. That's for the other doctor that's going to come. But, it's one of those kind of things where you have to kind of think about how your body is dealing with you, especially when, I'm 66. I will turn 67 in September. I ain't happy about it, but, I live good. I need a haircut, but, that's a different thing. But we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of everyone else. Because yesterday, my niece came over, or she called, asked me if we could go to the, movie, whatever. So I called, I picked her up at, her mother's house. We went to the grocery store. She initially said that she was going to get these brownies. Then she decided to turn it over into a bag of Doritos, nacho cheese. I love those things, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat them. And then she bought something to drink. I had stuff to drink, but she didn't want to drink diet soda. I understand. She's 13. So we get back to the house. She eats almost the entire bag of nacho cheese, which is why I don't buy them anymore. And I put a movie on TV, and within 20 minutes, she was out. She was just out. And so I figured, well, you know what? I'm going to give her some time. And if she doesn't wake up in about 30 minutes, I'm going to put a different movie on and see how long that goes. She didn't wake up for that. And after about 40 minutes, then I said, that's it. And I put on the Avengers because I really had wanted to see the Avengers. She didn't want to see the Avengers, but now she's totally asleep. So we do that. And then we're at a point now where it's 4 hours. And I said, picked everything up off of my tray, took it into the kitchen, took her stuff off to the floor, took her in there, pushed her, said, we got to go. You know, your mom is expecting you to be there at a certain time. I said I'd have you home at a certain time. And that's what we did. But her sleeping like that, she turned 13 some months ago. I'm wondering if she's now possibly leaning towards being diabetic. I mean, 13, I don't know that she would be someone who would love or even think about giving herself injections or taking any kind of pills. But I wanted her mother to know that this is just something you need to check her, test her on. She said, I have a doctor's appointment with her sometime next week, and I'm going to ask the doctor to check that out because, it might be a thing where we just have to now plan her food. I said, well, that works for me. That's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, it sounds like I'm rambling. I may be still rambling, but, in my ideal thing of having this channel and having my other YouTube channel is that I try to help. Sometimes the help is just saying how I have done things and what's happened to me, and hopefully it doesn't happen to you. And if it does happen to you, maybe there's something there that you can figure it out. I think a video I did a couple times ago, I think maybe a 5 or 6 weeks ago, I was talking about, different ways that you can save money or, make money by working for, for yourself and stuff. I don't know. You know what? I made it through here. The fan has still made me happy. Snoopy and I are happy. I don't know. Let's just see how this goes. Anyway, I'm done for the time being. I hope y'all have a wonderful night, wonderful tomorrow, wonderful rest of the week. My name is Mitch. I hope to see y'all again soon.